Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight, we are discussing chapter 1 of The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And matter of fact, I think the title of this chapter is If San Francisco, Then Everywhere Else, with a question mark. And so, good evening. I am your host, Dr. Ma'at, and I have with me my big brother T. Big brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience, even though you really don't
Family,
need an introduction. But go ahead and introduce yourself.
family, how you doing? This is Brother T. Always a pleasure to join you all so we can talk about this awesome book by Richard Rothstein, The Color of Law. Going to definitely drop some information that happens in that year in 1957 and also what was happening today. So I can't wait to get to this chapter, Dr. Maad.
Absolutely. And the reason why I said to the family that he needs no introductions, Brother T is everywhere. JT Coins is everywhere. JT Coins, when I turn on my TikTok, bro, I see your videos on TikTok. I see his videos on IG. He's on YouTube. And so that's why I say he's known. So that's why I say he doesn't need any introduction because everybody knows JT Coins, aka Big Brother T. And so anyway, I can't wait to get into it tonight. But before we get into it tonight, family, I just have a few announcements. My first announcement is this: family is going down in Baltimore on September the 10th. Really not in Baltimore, outside of Baltimore in Bel Air, Maryland. So maybe about a good 15, 20 minutes from Baltimore. Hip Hop Ain't Dead concert. There's going to be a Hip Hop Ain't Dead concert. The concert starts at 9:30. All right, followed by a 90s party at 11:30. Salute to all of the performances. I'm sorry, the performers. You know, J. Royale, K. Mac, the boy Bless. You got Armaday in the building. I heard that our big brother DJ, my big brother DJ Finesse, is going to be DJing, family. So be in the building. Hip hop ain't dead. Not a nice concert, right? But a 90s party. That's the part I want. I mean, I want to do the concert, but I already know T, the 90s party, people going to be salt and pepper and all kinds of stuff. And,
Kid and
you know,
play.
the brand Nubians, Kid and Play. And it was just the 90s was just a really, really good time. And to me, Brother T, and someone may want to argue, I don't know, but to me, I would easily argue that the 90s is the golden age of hip hop. That was the
I agree.
golden age of hip hop to me. And so,
Mhm.
anyway, I know it's going to be a good time, family, a really, really good time. So be sure to be in the building. Tickets are 25 at the door, 15 online. Okay, so make sure you're in the building. Also, family, on Friday, I had a phenomenal experience, discussion. That's an experience, but discussion with Sister Leticia. We talked about interracial dating and interracial dating and marriages. And so the question was, Brother T, the question that was posed is dating or marrying outside of your race ever justifiable, right? Because
Mhm.
there are a lot of people who are dating and marrying outside of their race. And when I say a lot of people, I'm talking about Black people who are now doing it. And so we do see an increase in interracial dating and
Mhm.
interracial marriages. And so Sister Letitia and I, we unpacked that on Friday, and it was interesting. She and I did a build. We talked for about 50 minutes and we opened up the lines, and different people clicked the link and they came in and shared their views on it. So it was a powerful build, family. So make sure that you go back and that you check that out. All right.
I
Check out
did
that
check
build.
out a portion of that video, and one of my favorite R&B groups. I saw you playing "If It Isn't Love" by New Edition, so I'm definitely gonna go check check
Yes,
that
yeah,
out
we
and see
played
how
that
y'all
at
broke that down.
yes, we played that at the beginning. Is it
Right,
isn't love?
right.
Why do I feel this way? And so we played that at the beginning to get people warmed up, to get it warmed up. But it was a lovely discussion, a lot of great perspectives. And just a very, very good discussion. So, family, make sure you check that out. And also, if you missed the first discussion of The Color of Money, we discussed the preface last Sunday. Be sure to go back and listen to that build. So anyway, Brother T, go ahead and start it off, King. I always
Awesome.
have you
For
start it
those
off.
who for those who have the book, we're going on chapter one. If San Francisco, then everywhere. So this chapter is definitely eye opening, and one of the things I love is when authors put either a passage like we had our dear Dr. Tareen Wright, but always put a nice passage, Richard Rothstein put a portrait of inside the first part of this chapter. It was a plant, the Ford plant, black and white workers working together in the plant. Underneath of the caption underneath says, Richmond, California, 1948. African Americans worked together with whites in the Ford assembly plant, but were barred from living in white neighborhoods. So, what we talked about in this chapter, which I love in the first couple pages, he broke down nicely. As we learned in previous books, and also those who have joined us for the preface last week, they did not just restrict us from living in communities, they restrict us from working in certain um, influential or profitable businesses. But I believe they kept us from working not just by saying no whites or Mexicans allowed, but they restricted us to work close to our workplace. And I had to go through YouTube because I'm on YouTube every day, and I happened to stumble across a PBS special, and I wanted Dr. Ma'at to share that before we go any further. Why? Because it goes exactly with this picture. And I wanted to read this caption again. So when you hear this video, I want you to listen carefully of this plan. And I want you to listen to Madam Secretary make her point about living near your workplace in the new economy that's about to happen. This is 1948 when we were restricted to live in the communities. Now, this new plan and new economy states that we need to all be prepared. So I just want that to simmer before we start this chapter.
All right, let's play it. Let's play it. Let's go.
Trey, the floor is yours.
Did you hear the audio? I want to make sure I'm sharing the audio because I know sometimes you all will be like, hold on, you're not sharing the audio. So let me go back here. Let me click audio because I know some people be in the chat. You're not sharing the audio. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the fact that the president jumped in there right away is a testament to how excited he is about this project. He's fired up and he's committed to it. And that's because he knows that we have to be investing in every community in America to help with the transition. So let me fill in a few of the blanks about how this program is going to work, and then we're going to have a discussion with a handful of the 21 awardees. First of all, congratulations. If you are one of the 21 here, you are the cream of the crop. Your applications were fantastic, and congratulations to each and every one of you. The president and I are so proud of you and just thrilled to be able to work with you. I have to thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. Everybody should know that this was the president's idea. I mean, as he said, the American Rescue Plan was passed 17 months ago. $3 billion of that came to the Commerce Department to do economic development. And we decided to put $1 billion into this Build Back Better regional challenge. And it's because the president directed me to make investments in communities, help communities revitalize themselves and get ready for the transition in our economy. Because he fundamentally said people want to work where they live and they ought to be able to do that. And so that's what this is all about. We believe every single American, no matter where you live, ought to have an opportunity to have a high-paying, family-supporting job in that community. And that's what this is all about. So let me fill in some of the blanks about the approach. It's a novel approach. This is the first time ever the Department of Commerce has made such sizable investments in individual communities. When we started, to be very honest, we weren't sure. We weren't sure if communities would apply and bring together coalitions and have the capacity to invest tens of millions of dollars. Well, we got 529 submissions. We went from 529 down to 60 finalists. And then from those 60 finalists, we worked to get to the 21 who are with us today. So again, the fact that you are among the 21, hats off to each and every one of you. Here's what makes this interesting. Everyone on this screen of the 21 will be receiving between $25 million and $65 million to address regional economic challenges and to invest in revitalizing the economies of these communities. So that's a lot of cheese, folks, to make big investments and revitalize your communities. This was all bottoms up. We went to the community and said, you tell us how to revitalize your community. And you bring the community together, public sector, private sector, universities, philanthropy. Get your community together and tell us what you need to invest. So as a result, this federal funding will be matched by more than $300 million of local investment and will leverage support from over 450 private sector and 27 labor unions or worker organizations. We estimate that together, this whole initiative will create or save over 100,000 jobs and over $7 billion of additional private investment will be catalyzed through each coalition's efforts. And as the president said, this is about growing industries that are critical to our future: clean energy, biotechnology, advanced mobility. And it's about saying to the small businesses and workers in these communities, we know the economy is transitioning. We're moving away from fossil fuels to clean energy. We're moving towards robotics. We're moving towards a more digital economy, a more technical economy. And the point of it is, no one will be left behind, because we're going to retrain workers, we're going to retrain small businesses, and we're going to light up abandoned buildings that may have once trained coal miners and today will train solar installers. Abandoned manufacturing facilities that may have, once made widgets will be, lighted up for new advanced manufacturing in solar panels. And so the important point here, and the president talks to us all the time about this, is that if you're out there, in Buffalo, and you drive by every day an abandoned industrial building, and you have a pit in your stomach wondering, is there a place for me in a new economy? Or if you are someone who's worked for 30 years in one of the big three auto companies, and you only know how to work on a traditional auto car, and you're worried, do you have the skills to transition to an electric vehicle economy? What we're saying to you is yes. Yes, because we're going to retrain you. We're going to retrofit small businesses. We're going to do solar installations at an industrial scale over abandoned coal mines. And we're going to make sure that as we transition, everyone's included and trained, and these small businesses are able to do this.
Okay. System. Turn your mic back on.
Look, I'm up here talking the whole time. I said, Brother T. So we heard what she was talking about, right? And how she broke down how it was a bunch of applicants, 500 and some odd applicants. It was reduced down to 60. They have 21. They're getting ready to give them 25 or $30 million. And that's going to be matched with like millions of dollars by like local and state agencies to revitalize their communities. I don't even know who there are, because I don't know who the 21 people are, but their communities, right? And she started talking about in the future, right? How we're moving more towards a technical future. And I'm glad she said that, because I've been telling Black folks, if they've been listening to me, Brother T, I've been saying that we need to get our babies involved in STEM. I talked about how the world is changing. STEM makes the world go round. And as Black people, we're going to be locked out if our babies do not have a technical degree. And so, you think that we're behind now. Can you imagine, operating in a society that is technologically based, right? And you have no technical skills. And so I've been telling people that. So anyway, she mentions that. She talked about the new energy sources, right? And so shout out to the program I had this summer with the babies, how we lit up a house using wind and solar, right? Energy. And so she started talking about alternative, power sources and things of that nature. But tell me, Brother T, Why did you say, I got to play this? This is relevant to what we are getting ready to discuss.
I'm glad you asked that, Dr. Ma'at. And the importance of this video is because these are present day plans. And when we hit chapters and when we read our books, we kind of hear naysayers or people who don't understand why we pick certain things. It's like, what can we do today? What can we use today? Well, this is today. This is today. In 1948, there were workers who moved from the South to move towards California because present day jobs. They was not skilled workers, number one. Number two, they didn't have any wealth when they moved from the South to the North, as far as California, as we see in this caption, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that there's mentioned that Rothstein wanted to point out was that they wasn't even able to move where they worked. So you saw that the secretary stated that every American should be able to have a high-paying job that they can support their family. I didn't say the gig economy. I didn't say Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, Instacart, or none of the same.
Right.
I said a high-paying job that will be able to support your family and the ability to have skilled labor. Well, this is what this chapter is basically about. This is how they kept us out the first 50 years. They stated, hey, we need black workers, but after we go through the secession, we have to have the war of World War II. We need more males. Since the males have to go fight, we need white women to come in to fill these positions. Then we'll get the black men, then the black women. Men have to sneak to other parts of the plant to learn different skills. And those who did that moved up in rank, was able to buy homes later on once they was able to retire. So the point I made is this, is that people don't know what's happening right under their nose today. I wonder how many people knew that this initiative was going on. I wonder, out of the 520 applicants, did anyone know either one of them? Out of the 60 that was streamlined from the applicants, I wonder if anyone knows one of them. I wonder if anybody knows the 21 that was at that table who will be building plants and hiring, in charge of hiring some of the people in that community. But I want to ask, what community? Are we going to be locked out again?
Come
That's
on,
why
T.
I wanted to make sure that clip was played, because people want to say, what is this doing? This book, 1948 is 1948. Well, this happened in 2022 on Friday. Tell me what we're going to do.
Woo! Brother T, hit the you got to hit the woo. Because you're right, Brother T. No, but you're right, Brother T. People, I still hear, I just heard an echo. I don't know why. But you're right, Brother T. People will say, oh, y'all are reading books about the past and what happened in the 1930s and the 1940s, not understanding that history repeats itself. You know, it's nothing new under the sun. You know, it's nothing new under the sun. And the same strategies that they've been using and deploying for the same, hundreds of years, they're doing the same thing. And so the purpose of studying history is to use history as a tool, right, to empower ourselves to do better and to navigate this society better. We're not just studying this stuff to feel good, Brother T, or to sit here and just talk. We're using this as a tool, like you said, to get ready, to prepare for what's coming, because something's coming. And like you said, Brother T, who was at the table? 21 people. Who are they? And like you said, they're getting millions of dollars to revive. Who are these people? And like you said, Brother T, what communities are we talking about? And they weren't specific about that at all. So anyway, Brother T, thank you so much for that fantastic introduction, like into the importance of this chapter. And so anyway, he titled it, he said, If San Francisco, Then Everywhere, with a question mark. Because what these white folks do, and people got to understand the game, they'll do something and implement it in one place, and when they find out that it works, then they'll implement it everywhere else. Just like redlining. A lot of people don't know redlining started in Baltimore. Once it worked in Baltimore, then it was implemented all over. Okay. And so here, Robert Rothstein talks about how they began to segregate a particular town in San Francisco called Richmond. And what they did, they implemented certain strategies to segregate this particular town. And then towards the end of the chapter, Brother T, did you notice he said, if it worked here, are we not to think that they use the same strategies to segregate the rest of America? And he pointed out, wait a minute, it worked here where there were no racial patterns. Okay. And he says this at the end of the chapter. It worked in a town that had no racial patterns, right? So, if it worked there, we were able to create segregation there where, hold on, I want to actually read it. He said that the San Francisco region was segregated by government policy is particularly striking because, in contrast to metropolitan areas like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, or Baltimore, Northern California had few African Americans before migrants we're going to get into who Frank Stevenson is, migrants like Frank Stevenson arrived during World War II in search of jobs. Let me say that again. I feel like I butchered it, and I know some people may not have the book. He says that the San Francisco region was segregated by government policy is particularly striking because, in contrast to metropolitan areas like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, or Baltimore, Northern California had few African Americans before migrants like Frank Stevenson arrived during World War II in search of jobs. The government was not following pre-existing racial patterns. It was imposing segregation where it hadn't previously taken root. So we can create it there. Oh my goodness, imagine what we can create in other towns where there are pre-existing racial patterns, right? And so anyway, when he gets into the chapter, he talks about Richmond and how it was a town, they said, the region's greatest concentration of African Americans during World War II. It hosted the most extensive shipbuilding complex in the nation, and later it was known as the site of a large oil refinery. So he talks about this brother named Frank Stevenson, who was really born in Louisiana. And he left, right? He left like most of our ancestors. And this is around 1924. And remember, Brother T, from 1915 to 1970, what was happening? The Great Migration was happening. People were leaving out of the South. They were going, north, northeast, northwest, west, in order to get out of the South in warmth of another sun. And right now I'm thinking about Isabella Wickerson. Shout out to that queen. Beautiful book called The Warmth of Other Suns. But our ancestors were leaving out, to look for better opportunities. In fact, I'm in Baltimore right now, Brother T, because my grandmother left out of Sumter County, South Carolina, and she came here and migrated to Baltimore, looking for better opportunities. And so anyway, he was within that flow. So he ended up leaving and going to Richmond. And so what's funny is on page 4, the author mentions the New Deal. He says, so this is during the time of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. And so remember, family, when we read the book, The Color of Money, right? Remember, we read about all of those policies and programs that Franklin D. Roosevelt created and implemented that did not benefit Black people. We were locked out of all of this stuff, right? And so all of this is around the time during his life. And I'm talking about the brother Frank Stevenson. This was during, the time of the New Deal. And so all of these programs and projects were created by Franklin D. Roosevelt that, quote unquote, aimed to restore prosperity to Americans. But Brother T, we know it wasn't all Americans. It was white Americans, right? But, they locked us out by saying, oh, well, this policy can only be used by people who aren't domestic and agriculturalists or agricultural workers. And so that's how they excluded us based on jobs, right? When really we know that they were excluding Black people. So anyway, he moves on to talking about how this brother, he left, and he was initially, working in New Orleans, delivering, food to workers in a shipyard, but then he ended up leaving to go to Richmond because there were a lot of jobs there during World War II. there were a lot of factories. They call them war industries in the book. So there were a lot of war industries that were established, and, people were, getting jobs. And it says that for the first time, you really had, they needed to hire, black men. They said black women and white women, but they hired white women before black men. But they hired white women, black men, and black women because they needed help. And so there was this huge influx. They call them war workers, right? That resulted in Richmond's population exploding. And so the government, Brother T, was like, hold up, wait a minute. We got to do something. We have all of these people coming in to work, but we don't have housing for them. And so I'm on page 5, Brother T, towards the bottom, when they said that the government then stepped in with public housing. Now, Brother T, this was interesting to me. You can stop me at any time because I go. So you stop me at any time. But it was very interesting to me, Brother T, when they said public housing, because typically when people think about public housing, they think of black people. But white people were living in public housing, right? But when we hear public housing or projects, people think black people. That's where black people live. Okay, so hold on. So the federal government stepped in with public housing. Okay. And it says that it was officially and explicitly segregated. So they had these public housing where white folks live one side, black people live on another, right? It says located along the railroad tracks and close to the shipbuilding area. Federally financed housing for African Americans in Richmond was poorly constructed and intended to be temporary. Pause. It was interesting that they mentioned the railroad tracks because I remember our elders and our ancestors saying how the railroad tracks used to divide the black communities and the white community. So when I read railroad tracks, I'm like, oh man, I remember the elders saying that you knew when you were going across the tracks, you were going over there where the white folks were. So okay, so it said, okay, the white defense workers, the government housing was built further inland, closer to white residential areas, and some of it was sturdily constructed and permanent. Okay, so it says because Richmond had they were overwhelmingly white before the war, the federal government's decision to segregate public housing established segregated living patterns that persist to this day. I need to get that that meme. How that brother say to this day, but to this day. Go ahead, Brother T. I know you want to jump in.
Yes, to this day, but most definitely, you broke that down perfectly. I don't have nothing to add on that part at all. But if we can go any further about keeping social harmony, this is what they call it, about keeping social harmony. We go on page 6. A policy of segregation was adopted and explained. The authority director for the purpose of keeping social harmony or balance in the whole community. So another housing authority official insisted that Negroes from the South would rather be by themselves. So that whole narrative, that we want to live in our own communities was always sold. Like, they'd rather just be by themselves. This is the reason why we want to segregate. We want to create racial harmony. But they did not want to add that they systematically made sure that the houses we were staying in was shanty. You know what I'm saying? You probably blow too hard, they would fall down. They wasn't supposed to be permanent, temporary, but the houses that they created for the white workers was stronger. They didn't want to put into the writings that, hey, over one side of the railroad tracks, we had blacks, and the other side, we had white. This is how we want to design it. But they went a step further. If we go further in the chapter, they talk about how they start doing war guests. They start doing this thing called war guests, and the war guests were initiatives for white families. If you would house a war guest, you would get federally funding to make sure for an extension for your house. So this is another opportunity for people to get extra money to make the house more valuable. But this funding was only offered to white residents and white soldiers. So stuff like that we learn later on in this chapter that and it goes on to talk on page 6. 20 projects for 24,000 units for both races built in Richmond during the period barely met the need. For white workers, the federal government created war guests. a program in which at least spare rooms from Richmond's white families so workers can move in as tenants. The government also issued law, low interest loans for white homeowners to remodel and subdivide their residence. So you got initiatives, say, you know what, you helping the government out. So we're going to give you some funding so you can help us out by, having the white or the war guests there. But for the blacks, let me tell you what they did for the blacks. So go down a little lower on the chapter 6, the third paragraph. Federal officials approved bank loans to finance construction requirements. None of the Rolling Woods 700 houses to be sold to any African American. So they also put restrictions on, you know what, you can't sell to African Americans. Don't do that. So the 700 houses that were created to be sold cannot be sold to African Americans. The government also specified that each Rolling Wood property must have an extra bedroom with a separate interest to accommodate an additional white war worker. So they made sure they had all the accommodations for the white workers, but none that could benefit the black workers. So this is another thing that the government put into writing. So we talked about last week about in the preface about Mr. Jones, who was married, interracially married, and they won the court case because these laws were written and some unwritten laws as well. Okay, so that's the reason why they can use the law of 1866 in play, because it was proven that they was discriminated because he was black. We're seeing that right now. That so there were laws that was on the book saying that you cannot live here, you cannot get a loan from us. So this is what he goes on talking about in this chapter as well. So I'm gonna go a little further down on the fourth paragraph. Housing authority segregated projects did less to alleviate the housing shortage for African Americans than for white families. Not surprisingly, units for African Americans included many doubled up families and illegal sublets. They had to make do. They didn't have the financial funding to make sure that they had the right um, add-on with the right door and everything, meeting all the permits. So yes, it was illegal. So I guess what happened to them probably? They probably got fined. You know what I'm saying? So many things we got punished, just for who we were. So by 1947, the Richmond's black population had increased to 2,600. Half still lived in temporary warehouses as the government financed whites to abandon these apartments, white flight, as we call it, for permanent homes in the suburbs like Rolling Wood. Vacancies in white projects were made available to African Americans. So once the whites moved out of the projects, here come the blacks filled their space. So once again, the government assisted on whites to gain new housing, which equity probably built up in the communities, and blacks were left in what they call now the ghettos.
Right,
So
the ghettos, and I love that what you said, T. They, so the government allowed creative programs for white folks to take advantage of, and they went out and created suburbs, abandoned those projects. We move in, and then at the top of page 7, Frank Stevenson said, "Well, for black folks who couldn't get into those newly abandoned projects, they had to live in North Richmond." And they said those brothers and sisters, while they were in North Richmond, they were living in cardboard shacks, barns, tents, or even open fields. And it says by the early 1950s, some 4,000 African Americans in North Richmond were still living in these makeshift homes. Okay. So these poor quality homes, right? Temporary and poor quality homes because nothing was available. So then he goes on to talk about the United Services Organization, the USO, which was established or organized by, even though it was private, they say it was organized by Franklin Roosevelt again, who held the title of honorary chairman. And so again, this was an organization that maintained separate black and white clubs in Richmond for military personnel, and also operated separate Black and white travelers aid services for newly arrived war workers. So, like you said, Brother T, there's a lot of programs that the government created and implemented to ensure that there was, separation amongst, Black and white people. And so I'm at the top of page 8. And so he goes on to say that he says to ensure that no African Americans migrated to Richmond unless they were, so they did other things. They didn't want more Black people because they were already a lot of Black people coming to Richmond. So he said that to ensure that no African Americans migrated to Richmond unless they were essential to the war effort, the city police stopped African American men on the street and then arrested and jailed them if they couldn't prove that they were employed. All right. So then he goes on to talk about the United Auto Workers, so the UAW, and it said that 3 years earlier, the United Auto Workers had forced Henry Ford to the bargaining table at the war's end. A union contract prevented Ford Motor from firing African Americans to make way for returning white veterans or white workers who had been laid off from military productions in places like shipyards. So it says right here in 1945, when the Army gave up control of the plant. So at one point in time, if there was a Ford Motor right there in Richmond, right? And so when the military took it over, and then the military gave it up. And when the military gave it up, Black workers who were hired during the war, they were able to stay there, right? Mm-hmm. But he goes on to talk about how after a while they decided to move the plant to, where is it? I call it Milpitas. That's what I want to call it, Milpitas.
We call that today
Silicon Valley. So where Facebook and Google and all those places are. So that Ford plant left. And so they it says that it was in a suburb of San Jose, okay, to a facility that was 50 miles from there. So, but what they did, Brother T, and this is to keep the Blacks out. So they moved the plant. So they purchased 160 acres, and I'm talking about Ford Motors, right? Mm-hmm. They purchased 160 acres. They moved their plant 55 miles south of Richmond. And so the Black workers were like, hey, I had two options. Either I move down there or I commute, right? But the Black workers could not move down there. They end up renting a van and commuting one way down and one way up every day for 20 years. I think they said Frank did it every day for 20 years until he retired. Well, why didn't they have the option to move down into that suburb in San Jose? Well, in the middle of page 9, he tells us this, that, okay, union leaders met with Ford executives and negotiated an agreement permitting all 1,400 Richmond plant workers, including approximately 250 African Americans, to transfer to this new facility. Once Ford's plans became known, Milpitas residents incorporated the town and passed an emergency ordinance permitting the newly installed city council to ban apartment construction and allow only single-family homes. Well, why single-family homes, Brother T? Because they knew that nobody was going to give Blacks mortgages on single-family homes. Had they had constructed those apartments, they know that Black people would have moved into those apartments. So what they said was, no, we're going to stop. We're not even going to allow the construction of apartments. We're going to allow the construction of single-family homes because we already know that no one's going to give a Black person a mortgage. So this is a way of keeping Black people from moving into Milpitas, right? And so they go on to say how the builders went to the FHH, the Federal Housing Administration. We also know that was founded by President Roosevelt, right, to ensure mortgages made by private lenders for single-family properties, multifamily rental properties, hospitals, and residential care facilities. And so FHA mortgage insurance protects lenders against losses. All right. So that's the definition there. So the builders went to the FHA to get approval for their subdivision plans, then use the approvals to get banks to issue low interest loans to finance construction. And it says if the houses conform to its specifications, the federal government then guaranteed mortgages to qualified buyers, right? We know who the qualified buyers are, without further property appraisal. Although banks would generally make mortgage loans to affluent buyers without government involvement, they usually shield away from making loans to working class families unless the mortgages were insured. Okay. And remember, they did not insure, the FHA did not insure mortgages that were given to African Americans. Brother T, did you want to jump in?
Well, I'm glad you stopped off right there, Dr. Mayad, because as I say, this happened then. And we asked, like, what does it have to do with us today? What does that have to do with us today? You made some great points. So I want people to ask the question, like, when grandma, didn't live in the best communities, and you like, hey, why couldn't we just make it? You know what I'm saying? You looked at every episode of Good Time, you're like, why are they always in the ghetto? You understand that sometimes it was a choice of not having the right job. Not that they didn't want the job, they couldn't even get to the job. And if they had to use that get from the job home to the job 1 hour a day, many people would be late, they'd be fired. It's so many things could have happened. So many restrictions were just put into place to keep people from moving ahead. So we learned from this chapter, from these couple pages, that they did not just write it in black ink of the restrictions. They said, hey, we're going to make it hard for them. We won't give them the opportunity to live near where they work, right? Now, today, Bank of America is allowing minorities, they call them black and people and Mexicans, to buy homes without a down payment, without a closing cost, and not worrying about being insured. Now, all these restrictions that we heard right in this chapter are being lifted. And I know a lot of people making posts about this. Oh my goodness, Bank of America is allowing us to be homeowners now. Why now? You gotta always remember, what's the trap?
What's the
It's
trap?
a housing bubble. It's about to pop.
Come on.
In this chapter, they explain that they allow blacks to move in a house, but guess when they allow them to move in the house? When they're at this highest.
Come on.
So they couldn't afford the mortgage at the time. So what they had to do, they had to let other relatives stay with them in order to help pay for the mortgage because it was too high. So right now, Bank of America is playing the same game under this rescue plan. Hey, you know what? Come buy a house now. And guess what's going to happen? You're buying the house at the highest cost. It's not even guaranteed that you're able to make the mortgage. So what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years? I'm going to snatch that baby back from you and resell it when the market gets better. You got to understand the game is still being played. In this chapter, he explains that happened back then. It's going to happen again because, God, we don't understand. We don't pay attention to history.
Come on. We don't pay attention. We don't pay attention to history. And shout out to Sister Amina. She said subprime lending going on yet again.
Yep.
Facts. All right. And so he moves on to talk about how, the African Americans had to choose between giving up their good industrial jobs, moving to apartments in segregated neighborhood of San Jose, or enduring lengthy commutes between North Richmond and Milpitas. And they chose to commute. All right. And so it says that, okay, as the civilian housing shortage eased after the war and more government subsidized suburbs like Rolling Wood were built for white working families, Richmond itself became a predominantly black city. Okay. And so they said that right here, look at this. This is what Brother Trigger Man was just saying. As the black population of North Richmond swelled, African Americans began to break into the South Richmond housing market. Soon, South Richmond as well became part of Richmond's ghetto. It says in 19, okay, yeah, so that's it. So yeah, it became a ghetto basically. And so ghettos are created. Ghettos are a creation of our government. Our government created black ghettos. Our government created black poverty, right? Okay, hence an argument for or receipts for reparations, right? So going on, I'm on page 11. It says, like the rest of the country. So, okay, then he moves into, I'm sorry, guys, let me backtrack. he moves into talking about this guy named Wallace Stegner, okay, who became a professor at Stanford University in Palo Alto, or Palo Alto, okay. And so this person, was it was a housing shortage going on, okay. And so he joined a cooperative of middle and working class families who were all unable to find available housing. So this cooperative was called the Peninsula Housing Association of Palo Alto, okay. And it said the co-op purchased 260 acre ranch adjacent to Stanford's campus. Okay, this is at Stanford University, Stanford's campus. So their goal was to build 400 houses, okay, as well as shared recreational facilities, a shopping area, a gas station, and a restaurant on commonly owned land. But check this out, family. Banks would not finance construction costs nor issue mortgages to the co-op or to its members without government approval. Okay. And the FHA would not insure loans to a cooperative that included African American members. So they were like, no, we're not going to give you, you got African American members. No, we're not giving you a loan. Nope, nope, nope. We're not going to do it. So it says the cooperative's board of directors, including Stegner, recommended against complying with the demand that the cooperative reconstitute itself as an all-white organization. But the membership, attempting to appease the government, voted a narrow 78 to 75 margin to compromise. The co-op to include a quota system in its bylaws and deeds, promising that the proportion of African Americans in the Peninsula Housing Association could not exceed the proportion of African Americans in California's overall population. Anyway, that fell through, family. That fell through. They couldn't establish it. Okay, they couldn't establish it. But it says right here at the top of page 12, in 1950, the association just sold its land to a private developer whose FHA agreement specified that no properties be sold to African Americans. The builder then constructed individual homes for sale to whites in Ladera, a subdivision that still adjoins the Stanford kitchen. Where's that mean, brother T? To this day, right? To this day. All right. And so, anyway, he goes on to talk about how in 1954, one of the residents in East Palo Alto sold his sold his house to a black family, and they created this panic. Right, it was this huge panic. Brother T, break that down. This huge panic ensued.
So in this page, on page 12, that Dr. Ma'at was stating that as soon as in 1954, one resident of white-only area in East Palo Alto, across the highway from Stanford's campus, that we just discussed, sold his house to a black family. Almost immediately, it was pandemonium. Floyd Lowe, president of the California Real Estate Association, set up an office in East Palo Alto to panic white families into listing their homes for sale. It was like a fire sale, a practice known as blockbusting. Not like the movie house. Blockbusting is what this phenomenon is called. He and other agents warned Negro evasion. Now, he was with other agents. They were also in this game. Not just the federal writing laws state that we shouldn't sell to them. Even they wouldn't even send blacks to that area. So even the agents wasn't involved in this game, So they put up Negro invasion was imminent, and it would result in collapsing property value. Antonio Moore stated this once. He says that blacks are a contagion of wealth. They made us a contagion of wealth, meaning as soon if you wanted to decrease the value, let the blacks in. This is what they believe. So anything that was wealth building, they wanted us away from it. So to scare whites from moving from their communities is to say, hey, the blacks are coming. The blacks are coming. You know what I'm saying? So this is crazy. It's another thing that we didn't know. But this is another reason why we couldn't build wealth. So Negro invasion was imminent. and that it would result in collapsing property values. Soon, growing numbers of white owners succumbed to the scaremongering and sold at discounted prices to the agents and their speculators. Now, they sold to discounted prices, right? But the agents, including Lowe himself, then designed a display ads with a banner headlines, "Colored Buyers," right? Which they ran in San Francisco newspapers. African Americans, desperate for housing, purchased the homes at inflated prices. I just mentioned this. They released all the restrictions today that will keep African Americans from buying houses. You don't get that $20,000 that you need to put up for the down payment. You know what? We'll forgive that. You don't need to get up that $5,000 to $10,000 for the closing costs. You know what? We'll forgive that. And it don't have to be insured. We'll forgive that. But the only thing that you're doing is buying this expensive house. Because right now, we all know that the houses are overinflated. Why? Because of the real estate bubble. But they telling you, you want a house. The same little frenzy, guys. The stuff is happening today, but it's another form. I'm just going to continue to read on. So as we see here, that they bought the houses for low, but knew that it can bait the blacks who wanted to live in the community and sell them the house for high. Now, this is some of the things that I mentioned earlier that they've done. Let me see, can I find that? So the California Real Estate Commissioner refused to take any action, asserting that while the regulations prohibited licensed agents from engaging in unethical practices, the exploitation of racial fear was not within the Real Estate Commission's jurisdiction. Although the local real estate board would ordinarily blackball any agent who sold to a non-white buyer in the city, white neighborhoods, thereby denying the agent access to the multiple listing services upon which his or her business depended. So if they found an agent selling to blacks, they're like, you know what, we're gonna blackball them. We're gonna limit their ability to function. So all these things happen when we had an opportunity to buy and move close. You know what? We just want to tax them. Called the black tax. I think somebody came over a book called The Black Tax, how we tax higher than everything, So I think Shapiro talked about that in his book last time we read, how we are just taxed. Everything costs more just because we're black. This is a perfect example of that.
Perfect example of it. And you're right. Shapiro talked about it in Hidden Costs of Being an African-American Family. Remember, Brother T gave that beautiful example of a white family and a black family who were positioned the same. Same income, same educational background, same everything. But the white family was worth more than the black family simply because they lived in a different neighborhood. So remember, he compared their homes. The homes were the same, but the white family was worth more because of the area that they lived in, And so, yeah, Shapiro killed that. But anyway, he goes on, Brother T, at the top of page 13. He says, the FHA and the Veterans Administration not only refused to insure mortgages for African Americans in designated white neighborhoods like Ladera, they also would not insure mortgages for whites in a neighborhood where African Americans were present. So white flight is incentivized. It's like, man, you're not going to give me a mortgage in this area if it's black folks in there, so white folks was like, look, when black folks start moving, we got to get out because we can't move in. You're not going to give us mortgages. First of all, you don't insure mortgages, for if African Americans are in the designated white neighborhoods, right? But then it says you don't insure mortgages for white people in that neighborhood, in a neighborhood where African Americans are present. So like you said, what did you say? Tone Talk said we are a contagion.
Contagious wealth.
Yeah, man. And then they like, man, we gotta. So white flight is actually incentivized. All white communities is actually incentivized. That's why Thomas Shapiro, his book is called The Hidden Cost of Being an African American, but the subtitle was something along the lines like how racial inequality perpetuates. Oh, somebody tell me in the chat how racial inequality perpetuates the wealth disparities or something along those lines. But it does. All right.
Mm.
And so anyway, he goes on to talk about it. You mentioned Bank of America earlier, and it says within 6 years of the population of East Palo Alto was 82% black. So within 6 years after that whole block busting or scare, the percentage of African Americans, literally went from zero to, well, that one family, right? But to 82%. It said that the conditions deteriorated as African Americans who had been excluded from other neighborhoods doubled up in single family homes, which you already explained, Brother T. He talked about how the houses had been priced so much higher than similar properties for whites, that the owners had difficulty making payments without additional rental income, and how the federal and state housing policy had created a slum. They created a slum, Brother T. And then he closes with this: the school district. The school district, what they did was they said, look, in order to keep the blacks from sending their children out to our schools in the suburbs, we'll create a school right there in the middle or in the heart of East Palo Alto. All right. And, right inside the ghetto, they said, we're going to put the black students here. Now, there were efforts that were made. They were saying that, look, hold on, let me read it. It said the board ignored pleas of African American and liberal white activists that it draw an east-west school boundary to establish two integrated secondary schools. They said, no, 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 we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is just build this school right here in the ghetto, and you send your children to this school. That's I think, Brother T, that's when they came up with the concept of zone schools. You got to go to the school in your neighborhood. Don't come
Yep.
out here. And so that's a way of keeping schools, you know, segregated or separate, right?
That's,
This,
that's a good
yeah,
point.
you got to go to the school in your neighborhood. So if you
Lotteries.
so if you live in the ghetto, then you're going to go to that underfunded school that's in that area. All right. And
Right.
so, anyway, Brother T, he closes with the statement that I made earlier at the beginning, that look, when we think of San Francisco, we think of this liberal place, right? Where
Right.
blacks and whites, they live together. And he's telling us, wait a minute, they totally, segregated San Francisco. Okay. And to this day, I got to get that meme, Brother T, so we can start playing it. To this day, it's still very segregated. And at the end, he's
Hmm.
like, hey, if they were able to accomplish this in San Francisco, they can accomplish it everywhere.
Anyway.
And so that's why he titled it, Brother T, If San Francisco, Then Everywhere, with a question mark. And so, anyway, Brother T, what I was going to do, brother, before
Hmm.
we close out, is just drop the link in the chat, just in case some people in the family, some people may want to come in and add to the build. So maybe for about 10 15 minutes, we take some calls. Well, I keep saying calls like we're on a telephone, but but it's so old school. We take some calls like we on a phone. But some people, I dropped the link in the chat, family. So if you want to come in, and I should say take some comments or hear some comments, please feel free to come in. The link is in the chat. If no one comes in, then we'll close out. All right. But if you want to come in and share your thoughts on the bill, please come in. Queen Amina is in the building. Peace to you, Queen.
Good evening. How are you?
Good
How
evening,
are you?
Queen. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Despite it all, I was listening again to a lecture that Mr. Rothstein had done some time ago, and he talked about Justice John Roberts and his decision, and he was alluding to the fact that government really didn't play a role in any of this stymieing of the progress of Black Americans.
Mm,
And he opined that, oh, this was the personal discrimination, and the state had no impact on it whatsoever. And that's local, state, and federal. We all know that that is a blatant untruth.
facts.
We all know that there was encouragement. There were backroom deals, under the table deals, constant monopoly going on. And for the life of me, I don't understand is that all of the governing bodies, whether they be, not within the confines of United States, but even the World Court, even the UN for human rights, knows full well that the progress or the lack of progress of Black Americans in this country and being subjected permanently as an underclass is being perpetuated from the time of emancipation to the present day. And no one is willing to do anything about it.
Mm.
Where it reflects on any other country, European, Asian, not so much the Latino, Central and South America so much, um, but definitely other groups. They have everything to say. They can advocate for the Muslims in Myanmar. They can advocate for against the communist government of China. Um, they can um, look uh, agree that charges of inhumanity, crimes against humanity, were perpetrated by the Shah of Iran, Gaddafi, and so many others. Um, but everyone knows, just like the president of North Korea had said, you are the last people to be pointing a finger about someone treating their own indigents as inhumane, because you do the same thing to your own.
Mm.
So, charity starts at home and spreads abroad. Then China, put their foot in their race and said, hey, United States, you forget about your own indigents? You're doing the same thing, if not worse. And you've been doing it for decades.
Mm.
No, I say not only decades, for centuries, you've been doing it. So, United States has been and always will be the biggest hypocrite of all.
Oh yes.
And until, you know, the governing bodies that who can advocate for wrongs done against humanity, until you can step up to this fight right here, you all are nothing but rubber stamps. That's
Mm.
it. So, I'm at this stage. I'm 55. All right, and I'm done. I'm done with voting. It has not. We have not achieved anything by voting. Our own people cannot see facts as they are. They're willing to give everybody else a fair shake and give them a pass. Um, I don't know. It's like permanent blinders on. So I'm out. I'm just over it.
Mm.
Our own people have defied us and happily, happily. So Biden meeting with the so-called civil rights. Civil means to be peaceful, like Dr. Clark always said. This is
Mm.
not peaceful at all. This is an act of inhumanity. And so, although we are not in physical chains, every area of our experience is shackled.
Mm.
So we're not free. We haven't been given the human right to enjoy the freedom of um, the so-called American dream. We have not. As a collective people, we have not.
We haven't. That's a fact. That's a
I'm,
fact. That's
I'm, I'm just frustrated. I'm frustrated to the point where um, I don't have that hope. I don't have that. I don't have. I'm even frustrated for my own children because I know that the stack is against them. Even if they obtain wealth, even no matter how much my husband and I bequeath to them, it'll never be enough.
mm.
It doesn't matter if they become entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter about the wealth they amass. It doesn't matter. Your
Mm.
hands are still tied. Your feet are still shackled.
Mm.
Your movements are still um, We're living in a militarized existence right now, and it hasn't stopped.
Mm-mm.
We're not really free. I don't know why people believe that we are. We're not free. We're not free. Everywhere we go, we are followed. We are, we are, we are hunted. We are still a hunted people. Jim Crow laws are still on the books. They're still active. They're creating more Jim Crow laws every time we turn around. I don't know
Mm.
why we can't see people for who they are and what they are. Stop aligning yourselves with people who don't align with you.
Thank you.
I don't, for the life of me, I don't understand it. And while we give everybody a pass,
Everybody.
everybody and their mother a pass. But they don't do that for you. Are they joining an alliance, coalescing with you and saying, no, brother and sister, I see the wrongs done to you. I'm going to stand in tandem with you. I'm going to stand in alliance with you. No, because everybody's about their own bag. This is from continental Africans. This is for Latinos, Afro Latinos, you name it. Even though they may look like us, they still, hey, I'm going for myself, me and mine.
Yeah,
And I'm not
absolutely.
saying everybody may feel it, but it's not enough of them that are joining in alliance with us.
Absolutely. And then I'm glad that you said that it's not enough because you got some people who will say, "Oh no, Sister Amina, they're white folks who have aligned themselves with us, and some Asians and some." And you look, Brother T, and it's about three of them.
Only.
I'm over. I'm just talking in comparison to how many there are. Right? It's a
Hmm.
few of them, and we'll make the few seem like it's the collective, and that's not
And they're
the
not.
collective. The collective,
Right.
they do not collectively align themselves with us. It
No,
may be a sprinkle here and there, but Dr. Amos Wilson said, don't get the individuals mixed up with the group. Right?
they're
Right.
two vastly two different things.
Absolutely.
And that has been a precedent. That has been going on from time immemorial. So, what has to, I mean, look, everything that we've seen to date, everybody's going for self alone. Why can't we see the handwriting on the wall? You're still trying to join. First of all, we are the only, after the indigenous First Nation people, we are being made a permanent underclass, purposefully. Same as Haitians in Haiti are being subjugated and capped as a permanent underclass. I don't know if most people recognize that. It hurts to see it, but you think we've made progress, and we haven't. There was I was watching a lecture with Mr. Rothstein. Excuse me,
Mm.
wrong one. It was Ta-Nehisi Coates and a woman by the name of um, Barbara Fields. I think it was Barbara Fields or Linda Fields. She and her sister wrote a book called Racecraft, and I read the book. It's an awesome book.
Racecraft.
Awesome
Okay.
Racecraft. Yeah, brilliant book. Brilliant. You also have it on Audible. And there was an Asian fellow that asked her a question about, hey, I'm Filipino or Vietnamese. What about me? Oh, um, the affirmative action. Oh, well, why can't we do this for us? Hey, hey. And she cleared him straight up on it. And she says, listen, Lyndon B. Johnson, the program that he was trying to create, a for some reason he had a black employee, was a female,
Mm.
and they would take her with them when they would, drive and go certain places, and she couldn't go to certain places to use the restroom because of the segregation, right?
Mm.
So I don't know what she said to him, but ultimately he felt the way. And he says, you know what? In 1964, 65, he says, we need to right the wrong that we have perpetually done against black people. That that legislation was solely for black Americans to
Mm.
atone for the wrongs, systemic wrongs that have been done to Black Americans exclusively for us. Who has it been? Who's benefited from that? Not us, white women, gay community, and anybody else who um, just tagged along to go along to get along gang. It's not about you. It's about us. And when we need to be unashamedly demanding, no, us. We built this country. We're still building our country. Look at the IP that not only America has benefited from, but the world has benefited from. All the inventions, all of the the copyrights. Look, all of the creations that we have contributed to society, from Charles Drew to the names are just numerous, from traffic light to the refrigerator trucks to gas masks to the arms to we have contributed so much to this country, trying to prove, no, we're Americans, we love this country, but this country don't love you. And we
Mm.
in every war, what did they do? They lynched you in your uniform.
Mm.
So we have a right to affirmative action. Nobody else. We want to, even Dr. King, and I love him dearly. Oh, Black and brown children. No, Black children,
Mm.
Black children, Black children. Let's advocate for ourselves once and for all. If we don't do nothing else ever again in life, let's advocate for ourselves. Act like we love ourselves. Act like we love one another. Can we just join in coalition just on that strength alone, unashamedly for us, by us? Can we do that?
Mm.
Thank you.
Oh, the sound effect, T, you got to unmute and do the sound effect, man. She just dropped the mic.
Oh my.
Yes. She said, can we just think of ourselves and do for ourselves and build for ourselves? And she talked about how we love a country that doesn't love us back, doesn't love you back. Then you align them with people who don't collectively align with you. Then you're voting for people who don't. Sis, see, I share your frustration because let me tell you, I was arguing with my family members during this past election. Oh, we got to get Trump out of office and we got to vote for Biden and Biden isn't going to do anything for Black people either. And then we were telling them, why are you voting for voting is, as Dr. Claude Anderson says, is quid pro quo, right? Quid
Yes.
pro quo. You're voting for someone who hasn't promised you. They think Black people are idiots. Let me just be real. They
Well,
think Black people are they said we don't have to give you anything and you'll vote for us.
yeah,
All we have to do is convince you not to like the other guy, right?
right.
That's the trick. We convince you not to like the other guy. And as long as we convince you to not like the other guy, you'll give me my vote. And I don't have to do anything for it. I don't have to promise you anything. I don't have to give you any deliverables. I don't have to give you any tangibles, but you will vote for me. And Black people have been doing that. And not that because, when you go at the Democratic Party, Lord, they think you're a Republican. I'm not a Republican.
Either
On
or,
my
neither
look,
am
look,
I.
look, hold on. Let me show mine. I ain't gonna show my address. Hold on. I just want to show. Hold on. Let me put my finger over it. I don't know if you all can see it. Oh, hold on. Let me do it this way. Mine says unaffiliated. Do we see that at the
Yeah,
top? Unaffiliated. Do we see that?
I see it. But
So I don't belong. I'm not with
I'm a
anybody. I'm not
registered
dedicated.
independent. I'm a
Yeah.
registered independent. I was a
Yeah.
Democrat, I was a Republican, and I'm disenchanted with both parties. And
Absolutely.
and lastly, I'll just say that, you know, I have listened to everybody. I've listened to Yvette Carnell and Tone Talks. I listened to Tariq Nasheed. I've listened to everybody. And I almost think that we are pitted against each other on purpose. I think we have moles. I think we have black moles. I think we have white moles. I think we have Latino moles. And sometimes, like, yo, guys, we got to see through the BS. We got to see through it, Because one thing we can all agree is that what we deserve, right? And we
Absolutely.
deserve to be compensated as descendants of chattel enslaved Africans.
Ashe.
Okay. Does any amount of money can it right the inherent inhumane wrongs against us? No, it doesn't. But we still are owed a debt that was promised
Mhm.
but never fulfilled.
Absolutely.
If that debt was never any onus was ever given to it, then we can fight from a different standpoint, a different vantage point. But that promise was made until Sherman rescinded that promise. I think it was Tecumseh Sherman, if I'm not incorrect, had rescinded that promise of 40 acres and a mule. When Europeans came into this country, they were given 300 acres,
Mm,
300 to start, to start.
mm.
So, it's not just the Europeans. You got the Arabs. The Arabs were dominating Africans for 1,000 years before the European. We have
Facts.
so many people who are at fault. We have our own people who are at fault. Regardless, they were at fault. We sometimes I've been guilty of kind of romanticizing Africa, thinking they could right or wrong their part in it, and they refuse to do it too. So we when Dr. Clark says we have no friends, he is not lying. He knows what he's talking about. He's been on the continent many times. So we got to listen. I'm not saying trying to, like, some people like, well, why do you keep going back? Because I want to learn what was done wrong
That's
so that
right.
we can know what to do right,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
But if you don't learn from your past, you'll be
To
doomed to
repeat it.
repeat.
Come on. Doomed to
So
repeat it.
it's common sense. You don't need a PhD to figure that out. No disrespect to those who have it.
Yeah, no, that's facts.
It's sense. Make it make sense.
Make
So
it. Mhm.
yeah, you have to make it make sense. And we got to see it for what it is. And no, we don't always have to talk about what we're willing to do out here because we got too many moles. This right here, this, what we're on right now. We don't have to let everybody know what we're going to do, but we need to do something and carry it out to fruition and stop allowing people to pit us against one another.
That's right. Well, Queen Amina,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Queen, because look, I got the young warrior, and then I see that Lord Wind wants to come in. Lord Wind is going off. Don't don't tell anybody that not vote and that we never said that,
Nope,
Lord
we
Wind.
talking
You
for ourselves.
yeah, we never said that, Lord Wind. We never told
Hear,
people
hear,
don't vote
hear,
and all
hear
that.
what
And
you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
that's right.
That was in the comments.
Yeah, he's in the comments. I don't know. Maybe it's she, maybe she or he, but saying we
Yeah,
never said that. I'm
No,
and
saying
then come.
I'm saying that if we vote, we need to vote our interests. That's what
exactly.
I'm saying, and that is transactional, right? Like
That's
you
right.
give me something, I give you something. I'm not just gonna go out here and vote for voting's sake. I'm not doing that.
And that's what people are doing.
Yeah, and
And
yeah,
this is every president we've ever had in the history of this country.
absolutely. So I
Thank you.
dropped the no problem, Queen, but I dropped the link in the chat for you, Lord Wing. You said you clicked it. I don't see you, but I do see the young warrior, African in Detroit. Young warrior, go ahead. The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Uh, how you doing, sister? How you doing, brother? Peace to both of you.
Peace to you, young warrior. How you doing,
Peace,
brother?
brother.
I'm doing fine. I just wanted to speak on one thing with a few points. I agree with the sister of that. A lot of times we forget that it's moles on all sides. It doesn't matter. The COINTELPRO days was such uh, awakening period. Should have been for Black society, and also I feel like we also need to pay attention to, although they're trying to assimilate us into the society, we have to realize that in European history, they've always wanted the majority of their population to be, I don't know, it's a science they do to make the majority of the population to stay ignorant, if you understand what I mean. And so I feel that us integrating with them is also doing that to majority of our population too, is why that goes into why we don't know our own history, because obviously don't want us to know about our history, because the resentment and knowing our history will obviously make us look at them different, but also because in general they want majority of white society to be ignorant too anyway, because if you know the top people are using them too also, if is what I was trying to say anyway. But
Yeah, no. We got you. We listening to you, brother. Yeah, you saying it's on. You're saying it's happening on all. Basically, you're saying that the mold's happening on all sides, and people are being used on both sides. That's what you're saying.
I'm not giving no props to the poor white people for allowing it, anything, for allowing certain things, because they ignorance is kind of willful a lot of times. But what I'm saying is that we forget that the American government has that agenda anyway, to for us to be, the propaganda is for, not just the propaganda is not on the outside always, it's on the inside too,
Oh
of
yeah,
how we
absolutely.
look at everything, like not just other black people, every how do I explain this? I'm not basically giving them any props for anything, but I'm saying that it's an agenda to make society in general into idiots, if that makes sense. Just like how on buck breaking y'all gave about how the estrogen level in men is uh made low, is lower than ever on purpose, is basically what I'm saying though.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate you coming through, and
Thank you, brother.
yeah, we appreciate your input, brother.
All right, thank you though.
And how old are you again, young brother? I want to say 21 or 22. So bad.
I'm 22.
22. Okay. Appreciate
This
you, young
year.
warrior, for tuning in.
Peace to y'all.
Peace, peace,
Peace.
peace. Yeah, and then another person in the chat, King Oz, talking about something about y'all stuck on slavery, the victim mentality. Nobody talking about that. Nobody even mentioned slavery. The whole build, we didn't mention slavery. I know we didn't, but it is
Yeah,
not
I
about
mentioned
no
it
victim
yesterday.
mentality. Yeah, we're studying law and policy, brother. History, law, and policy, right? And how these laws and policies impacted us, right? How it shaped the things that we experience presently. See, I don't have conversations, brother T, with people who don't know history about what's going on now. Because if you have not studied the things, right? The policies, the laws, the practices that shaped our current condition, then you can't offer me a solution. You, what do you know? You don't even know how we got here. So, anyway, let me not even give Oz any shine, man. You sound crazy. So, anyway, Lord Win, peace to you, beloved. Peace to you, brother. You have the floor.
All right. Can you hear me? Hello?
We you loud and clear,
Hello?
brother.
Oh, excellent. No, I appreciate you. Let me just say this. I love you. I think you're great. You know, I practiced law for 20 years in Chicago, and I moved here to Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things I'm working on is a project where I'm hoping that we can get some of these laws overturned as far as felons not being able to vote. See, this is one of the critical things in our Constitution, which allows basically, if you're a felon in 13 states, you are deprived the ability to vote. Voting is crucial. Now, only reason why I was saying what I was saying, I'm glad you cleared it up. We need to not only make demands for our votes, we need to punish these representatives when they don't do what we told them to do. See, so that
Absolutely.
also includes voting as well. Yeah, all right. Well, we on same Queen. We on same thing now. All right, that's all I wanted to say. We need to punish them. That means when you go and vote again, you say, "Oh, you didn't do what I told you to do." Guess what? I'm gonna vote for your Republican or Independent or somebody. I'm going to make sure you lose your seat. And what will happen is it'll be a shock to the Democrat Party because they've always taken us for granted. And so I'm actually encouraging people to vote, but just don't vote just giving it away. So I agree with you totally. So
Oh
we're on the
yeah,
same page. We're on the same page.
we're on the same
I
page. Yeah,
love you
and
too.
I
I
love
think
you.
you're great.
Look, and I love you. Look, and I love you too, brother. I love you too,
I
brother.
love
And
you. I think
salute
you're
to
great.
you. I love you too, brother. And I want to salute you just like Trigger Man did. He said the man practiced law for 20 years. So
Yes,
salute
yes,
to you. And
yes.
so
May I say
salute.
one other thing? May I
Yes,
say
please
one other
do.
thing?
Please
You know,
do.
one of the things I'm also encouraging, because I got a kid, of course, he's 20, 30 actually. One of the things I used to do with my kid is teach him law. Of course, you know, being an attorney, I teach him law. And I started teaching his little buddies law. And I thought to myself, you know, as attorneys, what we need to do is take part of our time out freely and teach our people how law works. Talk about the federal system, talk about the state system, talk about who would have jurisdiction, who doesn't have jurisdiction, talk about what you should do when you're arrested. There's a lot of things, you know, I always tell brothers, look, don't talk. Don't fight. Who said it? Was that Neely Fuller who said, don't fuss, don't fight, don't flee? Okay. You know, and I think what we need to do is take our skills and educate our people, because a lot of this stuff that they do, they don't know. They honestly don't know. So that's another thing I'm thinking we should do. If we got a profession, we really need to give that education like you do to other people freely. You don't charge your people. You don't charge them, because if you elevate them, you elevate you.
Yes,
That's how
sir.
I see these things.
Ashe.
Thank you.
Ashe.
I love
Thank
you
you,
though.
Lord
I
Win.
try to see you all the time. Okay, take care.
Thank you. No, thank you so much, Lord Win. I love you too, brother. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your
Yes, ma'am.
sentiments. But I was like reading your comments while I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
building with Queen Amina, and I was like, no, I don't
Yes,
want him
ma'am.
to think that we're saying like don't vote. Like you heard the sister. She was like, I was a Republican. She said she was a
Yes,
Democrat,
ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
I think
Yes,
now
ma'am.
she says she's independent. I'm
I,
unaffiliated. So I don't know. In her state, they may call it independent, but in Maryland, it's unaffiliated. So
Right.
I vote according to our interests. Now, if it's a
Absolutely.
candidate, yeah, if it's a candidate, and I agree with their voting history, the policies, that they voted on or whatever they're trying to put forth or bring forth. If it benefits my people, you have my vote. But if it does not
Absolutely.
fit, if it doesn't fit my people, if it doesn't benefit my people, I'm not just going to vote just to say I voted and just to get a sticker and to
Absolutely.
put it on Facebook. You know how people do? They had their
Yes.
faces in the bracket on Facebook saying I voted, and they have the sticker and they take it. I'm not doing
Yeah.
that. I'm
right.
not doing
Right.
that.
Right
It
on.
got yeah,
That's
it got
right.
to be
That's right.
about it got to be about
Yes, ma'am.
tangibles. But
That's
thank you.
right. No
But
symbolics.
yeah,
Yes,
no
ma'am.
symbols. There we go.
That's right.
We want substance.
I
No
love
symbols.
this. I
We
love
want
this. Okay,
substance.
good talking to you. Absolutely. You take care, man.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Peace and love. Peace and love. All right, brother T. I had to find the clip. I had to find this clip, brother T, before we get out of here. Hold on, brother T.
My man,
Till you
Dante
got
Wilder.
till you got, oh, there we go.
To sit up there and say, explain, you know what I'm talking about, man. It's fighting people. You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day. You just sit here, you don't know what I'm talking about?
See, I had to do it. I had to do
Dante
it.
Wilder.
To this day. To
Right.
this day, I felt that with everything in my bone. But I heard that I heard some
Yeah.
things about that brother. But anyway,
Make
I do
that a
like to
small
be.
clip so you can clip on it every time you want to. You put it over
Yeah,
on the side.
that's what I'm gonna do. Make it like you said, make it a small clip to this day. To this day. So anyway, brother T, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
Awesome discussion. Once again, I appreciate everyone who turned out to chapter 1, and we just went over the whole history on how not just the housing was segregated, but also the jobs. And we talked about how it's still today things are being done that we got to pay close attention to, because we don't want history to repeat itself. And we're behind, not getting the opportunity to get the training and also gaining the wealth by buying a home the right way without all the trickology. So I'm glad that we had this discussion, and thank you so much for allowing me to share the clip.
Hey, thank you, Brother T. It was a beautiful discussion. I thank you, Brother T, for being just consistent and coming on here and having these bills for me. I love all of the wonderful books. Family, I keep telling you, he actually recommended like The Color of Money and The Color of Law to me like some years ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And so it was sitting on my bookshelf. And so now we're actually reading the book. And so I'm super excited about it. So thank you so much for your book recommendations, bro. And also, for having these conversations with me. So family, join us back here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Sunday to discuss chapter 2 of The Color of Law. Next Sunday, we will be discussing public housing in Black ghettos. Ashe. So make sure that you come through, family. And I may be going live again this week. I'm back at work full time, man. And so sometimes it's a little hectic. It's like, you're talking all day and then to come home and then to go live. It's like, I'm just tired. I don't want to talk. I just finished lecturing for 3 hours today. Like, I don't want to talk. So I'll find some time, family, to go live again sometime this week, more than likely towards the end of this week. I'll possibly go live. All right, family. So I'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm sorry, see you later this week. And next week on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a black-tastic day, a black-tastic evening, a black-tastic week, family.